Welcome everyone to 3 Count Commentaries. I am your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about TNA Sacrifice from March the 14th, 2024. An overall solid show. Not much to complain about here. Though the card could have been better, they decided to have a 10-man main event, which of course weakened the card. But overall, it was okay. It was like a souped up episode of Impact, if you really want to be honest, though. So let's get into the card. Match 1, Mance Warner defeats Sami Callihan. So for those of you who have not been paying attention, Mance Warner has been brought to TNA. I saw this guy in GCW. I've seen him in MLW. He's got some level of talent. He's mostly a sort of deathmatch, garbage tier wrestler. Reminds me of a less technical Jay Briscoe. He's teamed up with Stephanie Delander of Steph Delander. This comes from the fallout of the PCO situation from, I think, January, where he destroyed the TNA digital media title, and he destroyed it. In kayfabe, he was married to Steph Delander, and so Steph Delander brings in her new boyfriend, who I think is her shoot boyfriend, Mance Warner, into TNA, and she got the TNA digital media title in the divorce, quote unquote. So now she's kind of going nuts, and Sami Callihan's there. And they have a garbage match to start the show. It was technically called a street fight, but they were stapling each other's nuts to stuff. You know, obviously fake staples, because Mance Warner is wearing like jeans. So it's like, I know that staples ain't going through those jeans. But also, they did a spot where Sami Callihan allegedly stapled his tongue to the top turnbuckle. It was just really ridiculous. And there was not a lot of blood, believe it or not. So that, of course, tells you that it's probably not real. But they didn't go super hardcore. There was no barbed wire. There was no fire or anything like that, which TNA absolutely is not scared to do. So it's not that. It's more of a creative decision. But they started the match, they started the show, I'm sorry, with this brawl. And Mance Warner wins with a running knee to the face, which, of course, after you staple people and hit people with chairs and garbage cans and everything, of course, the finish is a running knee. A running slap knee at that. He slapped his thigh when he did it. Look, Mance Warner is not the best, but he's not that bad either. I do find him somewhat entertaining, but Sami Callihan is one of the worst. He's the shits. I can't stand Sami Callihan. I can't believe he still has a job, for God's sake. The second match on the show was Li Yang Lee versus Tessa Blanchard. Now, everybody knows who Tessa Blanchard is. The TNA fans have kind of just accepted that Tessa Blanchard is there. You know, there's still some people holding out, tweeting negatively about it, but most of the TNA fans have just accepted that Tessa Blanchard is part of the show. But she did do something that was very strange. On the pre-show here, well, I shouldn't say the pre-show, because there was an episode of course, Impact the day before. She was wearing a red bandana and speaking Spanish, and that absolutely sent people up the wall. I don't know what she said in Spanish, and it doesn't matter, but she used to be married to a Mexican man, for the record, and she worked in Mexico, so she speaks Spanish. And El Paso, of course, is the former hometown of Eddie Guerrero. So there's a lot of Eddie Guerrero stuff. A lot of frog splashes on this show and things like that. A lot of little homages here and there. So Tessa Blanchard decided that she was going to braid her hair and wear a red bandana and look a lot like one of the Chicanas. She cosplayed a Chicana for this show, and people got so mad. And they got so mad. That was hilarious. That was legit funny. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, it's the silliest thing in the world, and I'm not so sure that she didn't do this on purpose to get people upset, but there was a lot of people mad about this. She got played to the ring by whoever sings her theme song, and it's terrible. It's not good at all. Tessa Blanchard did team up with Cora Jade on Impact. They wrestled Li Yang Lee, who is Xia Li. I'm going to call her Xia Li because I can't remember this damn name. And Masha Slamovich. Tessa wins the match. She ended up pinning Masha Slamovich in the tag team match. So that, of course, sets up for them to wrestle in the future. Cora Jade does not like Tessa Blanchard for a shoot. And basically wanted everybody on the internet to know that even though she worked this tag team match, she's not friends with Tessa Blanchard. So she put out a tweet saying, I'm only here so I won't get fired. I don't understand why she needed to virtue signal to people. Like, everybody understands what your job is. Everybody who works with Tessa doesn't need to say, I'm not radio. It's like if she had AIDS or something. Like, I don't have it. Test me, please. You know, you don't have to go that far. But apparently that's what they're doing now. Anyway, Li Yang Lee, Xia Li. She's been in TNA for a while, but this is her first pay-per-view match to my knowledge. I don't think she's ever worked on TNA pay-per-view before. And this is also the best match I've seen her be a part of, even including her stuff in NXT. But that was pretty easy considering she's working with Tessa. And Tessa is really good. I mean, you can say whatever you want to about her as a person. As a performer, though, she is pretty good. I mean, she's damn good, and especially in getting the most out of people who are somewhat green, which is not really her strong suit. Like, that's for a lot of the time that she's been getting reamed online. It's been a lot of it has been because she works with people who are green, and she gets very frustrated. But, you know, at least in this situation, she played it up well. And she's sort of becoming a little bit more comfortable in her time at TNA because the company's behind her. They're not waffling on this thing. Tessa is part of the company. They're running with it. But they had a good match between these two. You know, Tessa gave her a lot. You know, they both was pretty aggressive. Tessa's always aggressive. Xia Li did some kind of spinning face buster thing that, you know, she picked her up in a torture rack, which was pretty damn cool. And also, the highlight of the match, of course, was Tessa Blanchard doing a corkscrew superplex, which is tremendous. It was a beautiful move. And she wins the match with the Magnum, which is her leaping face buster, or sort of the leaping code breaker, which I don't understand why she jumps off the top rope to do a code breaker, but whatever. Hey, I'm one of these people that I'm kind of over the whole Tessa Blanchard shit. If the person that she supposedly, you know, said whatever she said to is not upset, then I can't be upset. And anybody who has problems like Chelsea Green or Isla Dawn or whatever, it's like, look, people don't get along all the time, so I'm not tripping. Overall, though, I think that she had a really good match here, and she gave Xia Li the best match she could. And Xia Li had the best match of her career at this point, which is all you can ask for. Next, the Rascals and Ace Austin versus Wesley, Tyreek, and Tyrone or whatever. The two guys from NXT. Look, I don't know, man. I don't understand why Wesley is still feuding with the Rascals. Hopefully this thing is over. This was Lucha Rules, which means that they didn't have to tag if they didn't want to. If one rolled out of the ring, the other one could just jump in. Okay. There's no luchadors in this match, but they're going to have luchador rules. Okay, fine. The forever feud between the Rascals and Wesley ending in a Lucha Rule 6-man tag match. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, it is what it is, but I'm not a big fan. This was the typical high spot match. You got a bunch of jumpy guys in the match doing a bunch of flips and things, and that's what it was. TNT were there to base. They don't really have discernible personalities. They just are out there getting the rub, you know. They aren't that experienced, so they need experience. But it would have been nice if they'd have took this time in TNA to really develop a personality and to develop his characters. I'm not sure if this is the end for Wesley and TNT. I've been calling them TNT because I can't remember what their names are. I think it's Tyrone or Tyreek, and it's Tyreek and Tyson. It just, sorry, Tyrone, but it's Tyreek and Tyson. Tyson DuPont and Tyreek something, or Tyreek DuPont or whatever. Or Tyson DuPont. Who cares what their fucking names are at this point? Anyway, they're not discernible personalities. You wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup, but they're just the heavies for Wesley. Wesley being kicked over to TNA, he just can't escape this place. Even if he wanted to, he can't escape it. But he also can't escape the Rascals. But the Rascals and Ace Austin win after I believe there was a twisty thing from the top rope by Ace Austin on Wesley, who took the pin, believe it or not. I can't believe that happened. But it was a typical X Division match, X Division 6-man tag, except for two of the guys on the heel side are not really good at doing the flips and the jumping or whatever. At this point, the show hits a sort of a low point because, you know, the next two matches are not really all that interesting to me and probably wouldn't be interesting to you. So I'm not going to go into any real detail. But Steve Maclin defeated Frankie Kazarian. Frankie Kazarian is still running around, technically the #1 contender for the world title. And I don't like that because Kazarian needs to go away. And Steve Maclin is just boring. He's just a boring guy. The storyline he has, it doesn't even involve Frankie Kazarian. It involves Eric Young. Eric Young is taking over Josh Alexander's stable. Basically, he took over the stable and kicked Josh Alexander out. And then him and Josh Alexander had a TV feud where he ended Josh Alexander's time in TNA and beat him and sent him packing. And now Eric Young, who was friends with Steve Maclin, well, their friendship is strained because Eric Young was partners with Steve Maclin during the time that Josh Alexander and his stable were beating up Steve Maclin. So Maclin is now kind of frustrated and upset that Eric Young has taken over this stable. But Young wants Steve Maclin to join the stable and saying, hey, we don't have to be enemies. So they're on the Thursday episode of Impact, they're having a drink and discussing the future and how they don't really want to be enemies, but this might have to be what it is because Maclin is too damn proud to get over the fact that the Northern Armory had attacked them. They have this respect for each other, but they just can't get over this hump. So instead of having Eric Young versus Steve Maclin, which I'm glad they didn't because I don't want to see Eric Young at all, they have Frankie Kazarian versus Steve Maclin, which didn't help me at all because I didn't want to see Frankie Kazarian at all. So there's that. The next match was a 2 versus 3 match for the women's tag team championships or the Knockouts tag team titles. It was Spitfire defending the belts against Ash by Elegance, Heather by Elegance, and George Iceman, who has been going by the Concierge. This has been a long-running feud. They have had like 3 or 4 matches, of which Spitfire won all of them. The most recent match was about 2 weeks ago, where Spitfire versus the By Elegance team. They had a match where the losers would be the winners' slaves, essentially. They're indentured servants or whatever. And Ash and Heather lost and had to clean up pig shit and be harassed for a week. So this match was launched by the By Elegance team, claiming that they cheated in the previous match, claiming that Spitfire cheated in the previous match, and then mistreated them throughout the entire time when they were their indentured servants. So they wanted one more match. They begged for it. So Santino says, okay, but it's going to be 2 versus 3, and the Concierge has to wrestle on your team. And finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of trying, Ash and Heather by Elegance defeat Spitfire to win the Knockouts tag team titles. George Iceman looks like shit. He looks like he's about, his late 40s. I can't tell. He has a great voice for like radio and stuff. But he's obviously not a wrestler. So the match wasn't great. It wasn't great. And they haven't been having great matches. This hasn't been a great feud. It's been mostly the opportunity to get Ash and Heather by Elegance over as characters, which is good, It's a good opportunity, but they've lost so many times that it seemed pretty ridiculous that they would get another title shot. But they got another title match, this time with a handicap, and they managed to win. Danny Luna is quite possibly the future of TNA's women's division. Now, that, of course, would be assuming that Tessa Blanchard is not, and that, she manages to survive. But Danny Luna, who, of course, was in NXT UK many moons ago, has really blossomed. She's doing quite good. Her partner is Jody Threat, who I'm not a big fan of, but whatever. This is the first time I think Dana Brooke has ever won a title. Dana Brooke, aka Ash by Elegance. I don't think she won anything in WWE. She might have been like a 24/7 champion or something like that. But I don't think she won anything else. I don't remember. I don't remember her winning many matches at all, let alone any championships. So this might be the first title she's ever had in her career, and she's been in the business 10 years or something like that. Like, legit. I I could check her Wikipedia. Matter of fact, let's do that. So I checked, and yes, she was a 24/7 champion, but this is the first legitimate championship she's ever had in her career. That's insane that she's been around for so long and has only won comedic joke titles. But then again, I'm not surprised at all by that. I'm not surprised at all because she is kind of the shits, you know. The next match was probably the best match of the night. Mustafa Ali defeats Mike Santana. They've been having a pretty good feud. It's over which one of these guys are going to be the future of TNA. Santana has been on a winning streak. His singles push, which a lot of AEW fans shit all over him for wanting to be a singles wrestler and wanting to go on his own way. I didn't forget that, by the way. I'm pretty sure he didn't either. But the guy has been working very hard. He's actually very good as a singles act. He's very real, very grounded as a character. But he's been, running through like the system and various other heels on his path to wrestling for the Impact World title. The unfortunate thing is, well, the Impact World title is held by a babyface. So he's a babyface. So this thing was not going to work out. So he had to have another heel stand in the way. Enter Mustafa Ali, who is back in TNA for, I think he had left for a short time, but now he's back. He has recruited Tasha Steelz, and he's still doing his presidential political gimmick. I don't understand why he's so proud of this or why he's still doing it 3 or 4 years later. It doesn't seem to be working out, but he is good. He's a good promo. He's a better promo than he was in WWE. And he was allowed to show a lot more than he's been able to show in his time in WWE, which is a positive. But this feud is about which one of them are going to potentially be the future. And they had a sit down on the Thursday episode of Impact, which would have been the 13th. They had a really good segment where Mustafa Ali says that Mike Santana has been an asset to TNA since he came, but he's not a great leader. And TNA needs a great leader right now, and only he can knock down these walls. He doesn't think that Mike Santana can. He says that Mike Santana has never faced any obstacles, has never faced any adversity, that Macklin doesn't care about TNA, he only cares about himself. But all of these people rely on the leadership of TNA. That TNA needs a good leader because all the talent, all the commentators, the cameramen, they all need good leadership. And Mike Santana isn't a good leader. He buckles under pressure, and the proof of this is that he's an alcoholic. He's an addict. So I was like, wow, they're going there, because part of Santana's character is that he's a recovering alcoholic. So Mike Santana kind of goes into how he's been dealing with pressure his whole life. The various street struggles he's had, the alcoholism issue that he's had. He said that Ali is a liar, that Ali is the only one who's here for himself, and he's accepted that he's an addict. He's addicted to this business, addicted to this company, and that he's going to show people that you can hit rock bottom and rise up. So Ali presents him with some wine and told him that he should relax. And then after the match, after Ali beats him, he's going to leave some wine for him to take a drink. And he said, you're going to drink that drink. And then you're going to lead to you drinking the entire bottle. And it's going to lead to you being drunk again because you're an addict and you can't handle adversity. Santana gets upset. He attacks Mustafa Ali after Ali says that he's going to let his daughter down and he's going to let all of his fans down. And then they jumped him. Ali has a bunch of goons because, he has his own secret service. Everybody's doing a secret service gimmick. And they beat him down. Ali then puts the glass of wine right next to Mike Santana and says, this is for when you wake up. And he cackles as he walks off, which was really good. Great heel work. So that really got me into the match that they were about to have. And they had it was a very solid match, but it was easily the best match on the show because it had the most engaging story. Ali does a 450 splash on Mike Santana's arm, which is always excessive. I always hate when people do that, but it's modern wrestling. It is what it is. He starts targeting the arm of Santana. Of course, that didn't do him really any good. Santana later would nail a frog splash, which, of course, if you've been paying attention, especially to my retelling of the story of Mike Santana being, an addict, and how he says he accepted that. He accepted that he's an addict, but he's addicted to this business. He's addicted to these people. Yada, yada, yada. That's the Eddie Guerrero nod. Everybody knows that. If you saw the Eddie Brock Lesnar segment, then you know it's almost the exact same thing. And so when he does the frog splash here, that kind of feeds into the story even more. But instead of kicking out, Mustafa Ali actually bridges out, which is, again, excessive. Like he can't just kick out of a very close move like this. But he ends up bridging out of it. The finish comes from a victory roll with Mustafa Ali grabbing the middle rope and pinning Mike Santana. So he cheated to win, but he did win. And Santana has suffered one of his few losses in TNA. It might have been his only loss, if I can think. I can't think about him losing at any other time. And Mustafa Ali leaves a beer in the ring for Santana. Great visual there. Says, "That's for you." And Santana then complains and bitches and moans to Santino later about Mustafa Ali cheating, which I don't like. I did not like Santana going to Santino and complaining. I think a man like Santana should just accept that Mustafa Ali cheated and that he needed to cheat to win. I don't like when babyfaces complain about heels cheating. It's like that's what they do. You want to get even. And he wants a rematch with Mustafa Ali, and Santino's going to give it to him. So they're going to wrestle again on this upcoming Impact, which I think is going to be live. I think every other Impact episode is live. So this is going to be one for the record books. This was a really good match. It was kind of plain. Like it wasn't no frills to it, but it was as solid a wrestling match as you're going to get. The seventh match on the show, Cora Jade challenges for the Knockouts title. She's fighting Masha Slamovich. Cora Jade attacks Masha Slamovich during the entrance. This has been going on for a while. Cora Jade has been hanging around, lingering around TNA, picking fights with various talents, and one of whom she picked a fight with was Masha Slamovich in her pursuit of the Knockouts title. This has taken her from NXT for the most part, which has been fine, even though she still has been wrestling on NXT. This match was disappointing. I expected it more because Masha Slamovich is one of the best female wrestlers in the world. And the finish came kind of subtle. Cora Jade is a sneaky heel. She's mostly undersized, doesn't have the athleticism. So a lot of it is character and gimmick and everything like that. But this match just did not live up to expectations. Like, well, whatever your expectations were. Like, I'm not a huge Cora Jade fan, so I wasn't surprised at how mid the match was. But for a Masha Slamovich match, it was very disappointing. Masha wins with a spin kick to the head and a Requiem, which is a package power driver. The only thing Cora Jade really did in the match that got any attention was a Canadian Destroyer on the ring apron, and it took forever to set that up, and she looked very tentative doing so. It was a disappointing match, if we're being honest. The next match, Moose defeats Jeff Hardy in a ladder match for the X Division title. This was also disappointing, mainly because Jeff finally had the match won after a swanton bomb through the table. This led to Alicia Edwards getting into the ring and hitting Jeff with the kendo stick. This, of course, leads Jeff to leaving the ring, and then he gets speared through a table by Moose, and then Moose just climbs the ladder and grits the belt. I mean, very basic heel psychology here. Nothing special. I said on my NXT review that if Moose did a good job, I would take him out of the bum tier, and he's still firmly in the bum tier. Still firmly in the bum tier. You had a mid-ass ladder match with Jeff Hardy. Look, I know Jeff's older now. He's like 45 or something like that. But The energy should have been there. There should have been at least a creative finish, which I kind of figured Jeff wouldn't win, but there should have at least been a creative finish. They've been feuding with the Hardys, have been feuding with the system ever since they won the tag team titles. So this whole thing was based off that, and so is the main event. This was one of the featured matches for the card too. Was Jeff Hardy returned to the ladder match, and a match that he could possibly win. But you have this 5'3" woman hitting Jeff with a kendo stick, and that hurt him or bothered him enough that he abandoned winning the match just to give her a twist of fate, which he did. And look, the match just didn't get where I wanted it to be. And a lot of that has to do with probably the safe booking of the finish. But the fans did really get into the match in terms of Jeff hitting the twist of fate off the ladder. Not off the high part of the ladder, it was like a bridge ladder. So it was like a short fall, but it was still a pretty dope spot. And the swanton. But other than that, it wasn't much to the match at all. The main event was essentially a War Games match. It's a 10-man tag. The Colognes, yes, Eddie and Orlando Colon, Carlito's brother and I think cousin, teaming up with, oh my God, Brian Myers, JDC, and Eddie Edwards, the System. So Brian Myers is in the pay-per-view main event. Holy hell. And they wrestled Nick Namath, Matt Hardy, Joe Hendry, Elijah, who of course was Elias in WWE, and Leon Slater. Now, of course, the System is the top heel faction in TNA, and they've been feuding with all of these people, various and sundry people throughout their time. And so all these people are going to team up to take the System down in what is essentially a War Games match. And so it had War Games rules. It was a 10-man cage match, one-on-one for 2 minutes, and then every minute somebody comes in. So, of course, the big spot was the young guy, Leon Slater, during the big jump off the cage. That was the big spot into the match. Ryan Namath, now he was an important element to the match, and it actually led to a very funny segment, which was probably the best thing Ryan Namath has ever done. He's been coming out talking about his big brother, but he wanted to be a part of the team. He wanted to be on the babyface tag team, and Matt Hardy called Nick on the phone via FaceTime, and basically said, look, we don't trust Ryan. We don't really want Ryan on the team. And Nick is like, look, man, let's just, let's let him be on the team. It's not that, just be nice to him. He's my little brother. You got a little brother, Matt. You know how this works out, right? And Matt's like, look, we understand, but we just don't trust him. And Nick finally was like, okay, but let me be the one to tell him so it won't hurt his feelings. And Matt's like, he's standing right here. So he's on speakerphone, but and so Ryan can hear it. And he does the very funny, disappointed little brother thing, like, I hate you guys. And he kind of storms off sad. It was great. I hate Ryan Namath. He's completely and totally useless, but he's good in this role. He's the pouty, entitled little brother who just wants to tag along with his big brother, and everybody told him, nah, we don't want nothing to do with you. You're a jackass. You're a jerk. We don't want nothing to do with you. So, but that wasn't all for Ryan Namath. He also appeared later in the evening, where he wrestled Joe Hendry for the world title. So this is how it was set up. They had been teasing all night on March the 13th that Joe Hendry was going to defend the title in a sort of open challenge kind of situation. So Santino comes out to announce who the opponent will be, and Ryan Namath appears. Ryan Namath tells Santino, Nick Namath has a contractually obligated rematch, and my big brother has given it to me. So I'm going to fight Joe Hendry for the world title. And he marches to the ring. 20 seconds later, he gets pinned. It was absolutely hilarious, by the way. It was great. The opponent ended up being Hammerstone, who is leaving TNA. And this was his final match. So Hammerstone versus Joe Hendry, which was on the March 13th episode of Impact. It was a solid match. I think Hammerstone has so much meat on his bones now that he can barely move. And, you know, he's a little bit older now. So maybe he needs to, I've never said this before, but maybe he needs to not be so massive. Like, maybe he needs to lose like a couple of pounds in muscle so that he can have some flexibility. Because he's getting almost like EC3. Like, that's when I never could really get with EC3, because he's so big that it affects his athleticism. Like, he's muscular and almost like, it's not quite as bad as Mason Ryan. You know, like, there's been guys in history who have been gigantic and jacked and basically no athleticism whatsoever. It's not that bad. But EC3 and Hammerstone are getting to that point where their athleticism is hampered by how big they are. You know, so I think they need to lose some muscle. You know, just slim up a little bit, and they could be fine. But I think Hammer a good match with Joe Hendry. It's not the best Hammerstone match, but it was a solid enough match. Also, Hammerstone leaving TNA so quickly, I think that has a lot to do with TNA restructuring. They've been restructuring a lot lately, you know, cutting contracts and letting guys go. Hammerstone is definitely an asset to TNA. It would be great if he would come back. I know he was hurt for a while there, but it would be really nice if he stayed in TNA. I know he probably thinks he can get into NXT now, or he's been teasing wrestling Jacob Fatu again. He's been teasing being buddies with MJF, you know, all the stuff he did in MLW. It's like, I don't know. I think TNA is the right place for him. You know, the place that he can get the most opportunities and he can get the most screen time, I think, is TNA. Like, is he a big jack dude who probably would look great in NXT? Absolutely. And I'm a fan. But I think TNA is the best place for Hammerstone at this point in time, knowing what the booking is in both AEW and WWE. I think for success, he would be best suited for TNA. But back to this cage match. So the 10-man cage match is the main event, and the babyfaces win. They end up beating the system, and everything looks like it's going to be all right with the world. After everybody leaves, Matt Hardy is in the ring with Nick Namath, and Nick Namath attacks Matt Hardy. He starts throwing him against the cage. Him and Ryan, they lock themselves in, they lock everybody else out, and they beat the shit out of Matt Hardy. So the show ends with the Namath brothers beating the hell out of Matt Hardy, and it makes perfect storyline sense. It's great narrative. It's, Nick Namath and Matt Hardy had that conversation over the phone where Nick is trying to be like, hey, look, you have a screwed up little brother. You know how it is. And Matt's kind of like, yeah, I do, but we don't like Ryan, you know? And then so you got Nick taking up for his brother, but it's also brother versus brother, so it's very cool. Nick wasn't going to go back to the main event anyway. So this keeps him important on the show, as he's going to be feuding with the Hardys. It folds everything Ryan has been doing, because Ryan has been the heel and Nick has been the babyface, but now they're both heels, so it all works out. I thought it was a great ending to the show. You know, as much as I'm not a fan of Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards and the Colognes being in the main event, it worked out, because you had Jeff Hardy was in a ladder match earlier that night, and so he can't save Matt because he's beat up. Everybody else is locked outside of the ring, and the Namath brothers are just beating the shit out of Matt Hardy. They just tore him apart. It was great. They busted him open and everything. Really great angle to end the show on. So the main event was the closing angle was hot. The match itself was okay. You know, it wasn't the best. And look at the talent that's in it. And Elijah, aka Elias, he's another one of those guys that is so big, his athleticism is hampered by his size. That was an issue in WWE as well, where he looks great, but then he has to actually start moving around, and, you know, not so much. He hasn't been in TNA very long either. It's only been a couple of weeks, so him getting hot-shotted to the main event was okay. Joe Hendry, as the world champion, has been doing a lot of open challenges, and they've been putting him in the ring with some big, hefty guys, like, you know, Jake Something and Hammerstone and, you know, guys like that, which is really cool. I just wish they were feuds and not just one-off matches. But I'm interested in what they will do for Joe Hendry in terms of a feud, because he hasn't had a feud since he won the title. He's just been wrestling one-off matches, which I think is not really beneficial and hasn't really helped him. Like, people have kind of forgotten about Joe Hendry since he won the title, which is, you know, the underdog babyface finally makes good. That is always going to be an issue, is how is the run? And they decided to go open challenge. He's a champion's champion kind of thing. It's like, he needs a feud. So they need to build up somebody to wrestle Joe Hendry from now on. So for the women's tag team titles, the Metaphor, Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend have come in. So they're going to add some juice to that division. They desperately need it because the women's tag team division in TNA is the shits. It's garbage. So Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, since they're not being called up to WWE main roster, apparently, them doing stuff in TNA should be perfectly fine. I'm actually very excited for that. Hopefully they can win those belts, you know, because who the fuck cares about Ash and Heather by Elegance? Anyway, the show was solid, but let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you folks later.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort, so question as if you worship.